Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Endowment for Middle East Truth's weekly webinar featuring member of the Knesset Ohad Tal. I was fortunate to meet with MK Tal when I was in Israel in February and immediately knew that I wanted him to speak to Emmet supporters. As he speaks with passion and conviction and is just brilliant, I'm really looking forward to hearing his insights on the important topics that we'll be discussing this afternoon. I thank you all for joining, and as always, we appreciate your support of Emmet and the work that we do. If anybody wishes to sponsor a future webinar, we would greatly appreciate that. As we often do, we are going to be recording this week's webinar, and it will be available to those of you who were not able to watch it live. For those who are watching the recording, I apologize that this was held during the Hague. We will not do that again in the future, but we appreciate you watching the recording. If we have time, I will get to some questions at the end, but we have a lot to cover, and I'm very grateful that MK Tal is giving us his time, so I'm not sure that we will actually get to questions later. Just a brief introduction, MK Ohad Tal is an Israeli politician who serves as a member of the Knesset for the Religious Zionist Party. He chairs the Knesset Committee for Public Enterprises and is a member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense, Finance and Immigration, Absorption and Diaspora Affairs Knesset Committees. MK Tal was elected to the 25th Knesset following the 2022 general elections, after serving for many years in several high-level positions in the non-formal Jewish education and diaspora relations arenas. MK Tal is an active member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, and from the beginning of Operation Iron Swords, he has led several initiatives to secure Israel's military and security position. He chairs the Knesset Caucus for U.S.-Israel relations and is the chair of the Parliamentary Friendship Caucus with Australia, Guatemala, and Honduras. Welcome, Ohad, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy. Thank you very much.
We have a lot to discuss, so I want to start with your view on where Israel stands with the war with Hamas. When I was in Israel and met with you and other members of the Knesset, I left with the feeling that Israelis across the country were united with a strong determination to defeat Hamas once and for all, no matter how long that would take. But there's a great deal of both domestic pressure on the Israeli war cabinet to do whatever it takes to bring the hostages home, even if that means leaving what remains of Hamas to fight another day. At the same time, there's a great deal of international pressure on Israel to agree to a ceasefire, provide humanitarian aid, and to stop killing civilians, while ignoring that not only does Israel risk the lives of its own soldiers in order to protect Palestinian civilians, but that if Hamas simply released the hostages, the war would end. So please share with us the perspective on what victory looks like and how you see achieving that.
Well, that was a very long and great question. First of all, I think that we are in a very critical days at this moment. I can tell you that, and again, I'll open by, first of all, by apologizing for me now stuck in my car because this day was extremely crazy. We had an emergency gathering of my party because the different issues which are on the table, and we are very concerned about where this war actually goes. And it was a very hectic day, and I think that the coming days will be very critical to define if we actually are going to finish the job and complete the mission, eradicating Hamas, doing everything we basically promised to the people here in Israel. I mean, you said that when you were here in Israel, you felt that there's a unity about the need to once and for all not just go to another circle of war with Hamas, to have more of the same, everything we've seen in the past 20 years. No, that this time it has to be different. This time we have to win in this war. We have to eradicate Hamas. We went to this war with three main goals: eradicating Hamas, bring back the hostages, and making sure that Gaza will no longer be able to pose a threat to Israel. Those were the goals. And I think that if you ask every average Israeli, he would tell you that he will still fully support this goal. And you know, I'm meeting so many people, and everybody keeps telling me, don't stop, keep on fighting, don't give up. You should not, you don't have the right to give up. And they fully agree. And I agree with them. And I think that the coming days will be very critical to define if we're actually pursuing these goals, or God forbid, we are surrendering to the pressure. And you're right stating that there's heavy pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu to go to different directions, to go to ceasefires, with all kind of promises from guarantees from the international community, which allow me to not be politically correct, saying, we've seen that before already. We've seen, I mean, in 2005, when we withdraw from the Gaza Strip, gave it all completely to the Palestinians, we had the guarantees from presidential guarantees that America, they will deal with any attempts of terror organization taking over the Gaza Strip. Well, we've seen what happened. Just a second after we left Gaza, Hamas took over. America didn't do anything. Not only that, now they're trying to prevent us from taking care of this terror organization after they butchered our people. 1,200 people were butchered by Hamas. 240 people were kidnapped into Gaza. So, I think that in Israel, everybody understands. We have to defend ourselves. We have to do whatever is needed in order to make sure that we will not meet this reality. We will not have another massacre from Gaza ever again. And I think on that manner, there's still unity in Israel. There's agreement about it in Israel. I think also, even in the cabinet, even in the war cabinet, I think that left and right still agrees that we don't have a choice. We have to go into Rafah. We have to dismantle the 4 battalions of Hamas, which are still there. Probably also most of the hostages are in Rafah. We can already see the stress that Hamas is in, because they understand that the next step is entering Rafah, and they just released a video of 2 of the hostages in the last couple of days. They're now suddenly debating a hostage deal, which sends a message that they are under heavy pressure, and the only way to actually achieve the goals of the war is to keep pressuring and not to go back.
So you brought up a number of things I want to follow up on, but you did mention the battalions, and I want to ask you something about that, because Seth Ransman had a very, very long, detailed tweet on the fact that, okay, Israel's defeated 18 battalions, and there's 4 left in Rafah. But he also made the point that in part, Hamas probably intentionally dissipated many of those battalions, and those terrorists are just waiting to reconstitute themselves the second you pull out. So what does defeat look like in terms of actually putting aside the war cabinet and the pressure from internal issues and external U.S. international pressure? What does an actual military defeat look like if you do go into Rafah,
Rafah, yeah. The President Biden said a couple of days ago that he insists that Israel will not strike on Haifa. So,
please don't compare me to him.
No, God forbid, I will not. But I'm saying, Prime Minister Netanyahu said, yeah, we are staying for that. We will not strike Haifa. Yeah. No, but to be serious, I think that one of the things we've learned from October 7th is actually to open our eyes to reality and go back to the fundamental truth. And you are 100% right, quoting. I don't remember the name of the person you've said, but I think he's right. For sure, dismantling the battalions of Hamas is not enough. And why I know that it's not enough? Because we had just, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, a poll that was conducted among Palestinians in Judea and Samaria and in Gaza. Ask them for their opinions about the war, about Hamas, about the October 7th massacre. And it turned out to be that above 80% of the people, the Palestinians today, support Hamas. 80%. Over 70% justify the massacre of October 7th. So you are 100% right. It's not enough to dismantle the battalions. It's not enough, because really, it's very hard to differentiate where Hamas begins or ends, and where the civic population begins. It's very hard to differentiate that. You're right. The only way I believe we can actually achieve a victory in this war is taking away the only thing that they consider as a prize. Because again, we have to understand in the Middle East, the way it works, and especially of course in Gaza, for them, Yahya Sinwar is already victorious. For them, Yahya Sinwar is Salah ad-Din. He succeeded to do in one day what all Arab armies tried and failed to do for 76 years. He did it in one day. The only price they understand as a defeat is the price of land. They don't care about how many people are dying in Gaza and this war. They don't, it's a joke to them. We count those people. They don't care about that. They don't care about how many buildings are falling apart in Gaza. The only price that if they will pay and will consider as a defeat is only if Gaza will be smaller at the day after. So I believe that this is what we should do. I think Gaza should, take all the northern area of the Gaza Strip, in which this is where they launched their attack on October 7th. All that area should be at least demilitarized. Nobody should go into these areas for at least, I would say, 10 years until we will, dismantle all these underground tunnels and all the terror infrastructure there. Nobody should get in. Just basically, the northern border of the Gaza Strip should go something like 10 kilometers down south. This is what I think that would be the the minimum victory for Israel and defeat for Hamas.
Brilliant. I think that's brilliant. One of the other feelings that I had when I was in Israel was the unity among the people, left, right, center. Everybody agreed, that you had to win. And this was on the heels of obviously the months prior to 10/7, the protests over proposed judicial reforms that really seemed to be ripping the country apart. So, shortly after I left, though, the divisiveness that had plagued Israel prior to 10/7 seemed to be creeping back up. And now you've got the hostage square that is now focused, it seems, more on unseating Bibi, getting Bibi out of office, early elections. What is going on domestically?
Again, I think also you're asking a lot of great questions, but I think also here, it depends if you'll just go and speak with people on the ground, or if you'll go and listen to the media. I think if you'll go and listen to the media, you'll feel that there's such a divisive among Israelis, and that people that everything is coming back to exactly what we've seen in the times of the judicial reform, which I believe that also back then it wasn't. I mean, we've seen all these riots, but I don't think it reflects what vast majority of Israelis feel, thinks, believe. But of course, the media made it look like as if half the country, or even I don't know, maybe the majority of the people in Israel are against the judicial reform, and I think they're going back to the same pattern, trying to make it look again as if the country is falling apart. But I don't think that that's the truth. I think that if you'll go and I think we've seen it, we all also see that with a lot of many of the families, the hostage families, who are getting more and more brave, voicing their true opinion that they think that no, we cannot pay any price. First of all, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to pay every price. That will for sure. I mean, look at what the deal that we are now have on the table. Basically, this deal, horrible deal, buries sentenced to death 3/4 of the hostages. So are we really willing to pay a death sentence for 3/4 of the hostages just in order to bring 20 back? Does that make any sense? Are we really willing not just to pay with the lives of 3/4 of the hostages, but also keeping Hamas alive, making them victorious, completely victorious, withdrawing from the Gaza Strip, basically allowing them to go back to all the places in the Gaza Strip, basically keeping them alive? That would mean that we will witness another massacre. We will have another October 7th in the future. The people of the villages around Gaza the Israeli villages will not be able to feel safe. Does that make any sense? And I think many people in Israel, despite this massive campaign, I feel that many people are understand that.
So you mentioned the war cabinet in the context of what we're talking about right now. I want your thoughts on how strong you think the war cabinet is and whether you think it'll hold throughout all of these negotiations. The Wall Street Journal last week had an article that went into the political rivalries between Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, Benny Gantz. They disagree on the approach. They're vying for Bibi's job. They, Gallant, excuse me, and Gantz have their own bad blood, but it does seem like their priorities are diverging, and Gantz wants the hostages home at any cost. Smotrich, on the other hand, is insisting on going into Rafah, and now we've got Blinken in town who's pushing this horrible deal that you're discussing. So how does this play out with the war cabinet? Where do you see the government being able to withstand all of these divisive decisions?
You're right. It's a good question. I can tell you again, we had today in our party an emergency meeting to discuss what are we going to do if this kind of a deal will be promoted by the government. And of course, our decision is that we will not be able to support the government. We will have to resign. We'll have to basically, that will end the government. And we will not be able to support such a deal, which basically the meaning of it again is waving the white flag, surrendering to Hamas, giving up, not just giving up all of Israel's interests, but posing Israel to existential threat. Because again, people has to understand, we are not like America living with ourselves on an island. We are surrounded by countries who just waiting for the right moment to strike us. And they already believe that Israel is weak. Look at what Iran did 2 weeks ago, basically for the first time in history, not attacking Israel or any of its rivals through proxies. We all know that they are the biggest supporters of Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen, and of course Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza and Judea and Samaria, but they directly decided to attack Israel. And the reason for that is because they felt that Israel is weak. So when you're weak in the Middle East, everybody wants to come and grovel by. So this is a serious threat to the very existence of the Jewish democratic state of Israel. And we will do everything to prevent that from happening. And of course, we will not be part of a government which surrendering, despite the international pressure. We have to push it back and say, no, Israel has to take care of itself. We have to take care of our citizens. And I hope that everybody on the government will come to their senses and realize the threat that we have to face.
So you've raised a number of topics that I want to discuss in more detail, but I want to just drill down on the hostage situation for one more second and clarify what's being discussed right now in this deal. So it looks like if the ceasefire does occur, Israel's going to forgo going into Rafah, but don't they have to go in at some point? So if there is a deal, do you believe that the Rafah incursion will just be delayed? And do you see a scenario in which Hamas releases all of the hostages, dead and alive, at any point in time? Because it seems to me that that's the only leverage that they have to survive. So why would they give that up? And, they held Gilad Shalit for 5 years. They've been holding the bodies of Iran Shah and Hadar Golden for 10 years, I believe. So, do you think that the hostage, this is a horrible thing to ask, but do you think the hostages are going to make it out? You said 1/3 are going to be, you're not going to see them. Do you believe that that's eventually the direction that this will lead?
First of all, we are in a very difficult position. You're right. We have to understand Hamas is a brutal, murderous, Nazi organization. They're not, just another country we have to negotiate with and come to a place of a compromise and agreement. No, they're brutal, murderous, organization that has only one goal, and that is to destroy Israel. When they launched the attack on October 7th, they didn't just wanted to release some of their prisoners in Israeli jail. No, they wanted to release Jerusalem. They wanted to wipe Israel from the face of the planet. This is what they wanted to do. So the only way to actually deal with such an terror organization is to make them beg for a deal. That's the only way. That's the only way. Negotiating with them for sure will not bring us any closer to change the reality. It will not bring us closer to bring back all the hostages. We know. I mean, you see that even when they started to negotiate that deal, that horrible deal, we started with 40 the release of 40 hostages. Now they're willing to only negotiate about 20 hostages. So again, the vast majority of the hostages will stay in their hands. And when you're, as part of the deal, willing to basically say, you know, we are going to a ceasefire, which basically the meaning of it is the end of the war. The IDF soldiers will all be withdrawn from the Gaza Strip. So we will lose every leverage we have on Hamas. So why would they bring back the rest of the hostages? Why? You have no leverage on them, and you already gave it all up to them. Not only that, we see what Blinken is already talking about. Secretary of State Blinken is saying that this hostage deal is only the basics for the establishing a Palestinian state. So they got it all. I mean, they butchered us on October 7th. They don't have to bring back the hostages, and as a reward, they're getting a Palestinian state supported by America. So what else do they need? So of course, the only way to deal with such a terror organization, that's the reality. Again, we want to believe fantasies, but now we have to wake up and realize the reality. The reality is that the only way to deal with them is by pressuring them military. That's the only way.
Yeah, this administration has been obsessed with a Palestinian state since even prior to 10/7. Even they're the ones that injected it into the negotiations with the Saudis for normalization. It was not a Saudi idea; it was the U.S.
Right.
And when I was there, I mean, speaking to you, speaking to other members of the Knesset, I mean, everybody was it's insane to award Hamas with even any discussion. It shouldn't even be talked about.
You're right.
Very upsetting.
And trying, I want to add to that, you know, that they're trying to present that as if the alternatives is for Netanyahu. They try to present as if this is a political question for Netanyahu to choose. Either you want normalization with the Saudis and establishing a Palestinian state on the one hand, or you want to enter Rafah and join your extremists in your coalition and hunt Hamas in Rafah. Well, that's an absurd, because whoever speaks with the Saudis and the Emiratis knows that they want, even more than we do. Well, no, I don't want to exaggerate. Maybe not more than we do, but at least as much as we do, they want us to eradicate Hamas. They're saying that. And everybody who's talking to them knows that that's the truth. They hate Hamas. They hate the Muslim Brotherhood, not less than we do. They're threatening them just as much. And you know, we've seen, whoever needed a proof for that saw exactly 2 weeks ago what happened when Iran attacked Israel. We've seen which countries stood by our side. Without a Palestinian state, without all these nonsense, they stood with us because they felt that Israel is the only power in the region that can align with them and protect them from Iran. If Israel will be weaker, if we will not defeat Hamas, if we will allow them to have a Palestinian state and keep threatening us, the Saudis would not want to strengthen their alliance with Israel. That's an absurd.
Yeah. I actually read a report this morning that the Saudis have agreed to normalization. It's just a matter of when they're going to announce it. And it's going to probably be based on the U.S. political calendar, which will be interesting to see in the coming weeks. So let's talk about the U.S.-Israel relationship, because that's obviously important, and I know that's something that you're very focused on. Unfortunately, as all of this is going on, the Biden administration has what I'd be calling a bipolar manner in which it's addressing this. It's in the one hand saying certain things to the public, at least initially, in support of Israel, and then on the other, it's hindering Israel's ability to fight to the finish. So, I mean, and it's not just the Biden administration. We've got Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi calling for early elections. So we've got Democrats that are calling to cut off aid to Israel, or at least condition it on ridiculous requirements. And then unheard of, it to me, is that Secretary Blinken had been at least early on, sitting in the war room with the war cabinet, playing a role in making decisions on what Israel would do. And the U.S. also prevented Israel from a preemptive strike on Hezbollah early on, and now, of course, is trying to stop Israel from going into Rafah. So the U.S. has hardly been Israel's best friend. And then we can look at the UN, the resolutions calling for a ceasefire that wasn't tied to the hostages. It's very distressing. So, and I should add, we've got the U.S. condemning specific IDF units and sanctioning Israeli settlers. What are Israelis saying, and are you concerned with the way this administration is handling things, and also seeing the Democrats move more away from their support of Israel than we have even more? I mean, it's been happening, but it's really in our faces now. So what is your understanding of how the government is negotiating with the U.S., how it's withstanding U.S. pressure? And I think it was you when I was there that noted that Bibi's the only person who can handle the Biden administration and really push back against that pressure. So your thoughts, please.
I mean, you gave all the great examples about that proves that unfortunately, the current administration is not just not supporting Israel, is basically doing everything they can in order to prevent Israel from actually winning this war. And again, at the end of the day, it's very simple. That poses an existential threat to Israel, to our very existence. This is the reality. We are in that delicate situation. We are fighting for our existence. And when the first thing President Biden does after the unprecedented attack of Iran against Israel with over 300 ballistic missiles and drones and all that is to call Prime Minister Netanyahu and tell him, watch out, we will not back you, we will not support you strike back on Iran. This is not supporting Israel. When you gave all these great examples, I mean we are seeing what is happening now in all the college campuses in America. The crazy rise of anti-Semitism. It's not even just anti-Semitism. It's when they're shouting death to America, when they're burning American flags just as much. They're supporting Hamas. They're supporting jihadists who murder little babies and beheading little kids and raping women in front of their husbands and children. I mean, this is craziness. And what does the administration is doing? Instead of fighting that, is surrendering to that. It's not even basically, almost doesn't, they don't even say anything about it, as if it doesn't exist. They're sanctioning people just like myself who lives in Judea and Samaria. Why on earth you would do such a thing to your closest ally, to the only democracy in the Middle East? I mean, again, at the end of the day, Israel is serving America's interest in the region every single day. We're not just fighting our war against Hamas. We are fighting the war of Western civilization against radical fundamentals, Islamists. That's the reality. They call us the little Satan. They call America the big Satan. A couple of days ago, I spoke with a soldier who came back from Gaza. And he came back with a Palestinian flag, and it was that he found in Gaza, and it was written on it in Arabic. On Saturday, we will slaughter the Jews, but on Sunday, we will slaughter the Christians. We are just the forefront of this war. It's Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs once said that what starts with the Jews rarely ends with the Jews. So that's the reality. And when the administration not only doesn't realize it and are really backing us up, again, not to veto this scandalous decision of the U.S. Security Council to impose ceasefire on Israel without the demand of bringing back the hostages, it's basically telling Israel, you don't have the right to defend yourself. This is what it means, as simple as that. So they're now supporting that. The administration now is basically, and we know that, encouraging the ICC to sanction Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister Gallant, the Chief of Staff of the Israeli Army. That is crazy. This is not the way you treat your ally. And I think this is a situation I believe that we haven't met before. I mean, I think that this current administration is basically, giving all its values, all its principles, all of America's interests, just in order to maybe. I think it's foolish, but maybe that they feel that if they'll do that, they'll be able to make Michigan go with them in the elections. That's craziness, and I really, really hope that the people there will come up and realize the grave mistakes they're doing.
Well, it's completely immoral. I mean, there's the one moral side to this whole situation, and so far the administration's not taking it, whether it's speaking out against what's going on campuses. We do need more Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, because rest in peace. Yeah. And you make the Western civilization point. I'm really glad that you made, because that's critically important. It's something, again, when we spoke in the Knesset, you pointed that out as well. And I think Israelis understand that. Unfortunately, this administration doesn't understand that when you put daylight between the US and Israel, the enemies see that. And I don't think that 10/7 would have happened if there had not been daylight between the US and Israel. Nor do I think that Iran would have been so brazen to do what Iran did.
You're right. You're right. I think one of the biggest reasons they did it, it's because they saw what is happening to the relations between Israel and America, and they felt that Israel is isolated. That gave them the bravery to go and directly attack Israel. So America should ask us if that. America cares more than anything for security and stability. Does not backing your closest ally in the Middle East, does that bring more stability? Does that what messages does that sends to radical Islamists all over the world? It sends a horrible message, and I believe that we will not be the only one to pay the price of this grave mistakes. But unfortunately, I think America will also pay the price for that. And we can already see what is happening in college campuses in America. This is absolutely craziness, and I think it's part of radical Islamists understanding that that's the time to create more and more chaos, to basically attack, to use the big democracy of the world, and maybe use the system in order to attack this country, and this is what is happening.
Do you have any thoughts on, Israel is unfortunately dependent on the US. The Biden administration is treating Israel horrifically because of that, but is there any discussion in the government to figure out in the coming years, decades, how to sort of separate itself from dependence on the US so that you don't find yourself in a situation where the US is dictating how you can, defend yourselves?
I think for many years, the approach of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and maybe many people were upset with him about it in previous years because they didn't understand why he's insisting on keeping good terms with Russia, with Vladimir Putin. And I believe today that part of the reason he decided to do that is exactly because of that. He didn't want to be so dependent on only one superpower. He wanted to be able to shift between Russia and United States in a way that we will not be relying only on one country. So yeah, I think one of the things we've learned from recent months is that we should be more independent, and I hope that we will accelerate this process to really find the ability to be more independent. I think we need it for our existence. We all know what is happening, unfortunately, in the Democratic Party. If we have problems today, it will only be worse in 10 years in the future. of course, if it will continue on the same path. So yes, I believe that Israel should be much more independent.
All right, so I want to turn to some of the additional threats to Israel's security. There's currently 60,000 Israelis displaced from their homes in the north due to the possible war with Hezbollah, which is actually a war that I think is taking place with rockets raining in. I was in the camp of those who hoped that Israel would preemptively attack Hezbollah, and as I mentioned, that was something that the Biden administration really put the kibosh on. Do you believe that war with Hezbollah is inevitable, and do Israelis support a second front opening up north? Or do you believe that diplomacy is going to lead to Hezbollah eventually moving its forces back to the Litani River? And is that even enough if they did that?
You know, a terror organization, we've seen what is happening when you're dealing with a terror organization. I mean, you know, many people ask me at the beginning of the war, how could it be? How could it be that Israel, with the greatest intelligence in the world, didn't understand that Hamas is planning everything? And you know, the problem we had wasn't that we didn't have the information. We had all the information. We had the booklets with the instructions of how Hamas is planning to occupy these villages and kibbutzim in the south. We had all their plans, but we wanted to believe that, you know, that if we will, again, as we did in 2005, if we will withdraw and give them the land, and if we will improve their economy and give them more work permissions, and you know, that they will have something to lose, so slowly but surely they'll become normal, and they would put aside their desire to kill us. Well, it didn't work. You know, we saw what happened. So the same thing with Hezbollah. The same thing with Hezbollah. This is a terror organization, which is whole purpose is to destroy Israel. So what kind of diplomacy can change? I mean, it's not even naive saying that a diplomatic solution can solve this problem, because again, the whole purpose of Hezbollah is to destroy Israel. So you're saying that, well, what kind of diplomacy can cause this organization just to, you know, abandon its whole reason to exist? It doesn't make any sense. So I think, again, if you don't want to fool ourselves, one way or another, this day or another, we will have to launch a war again, also with Hezbollah. We don't like it. We don't love this idea, but we don't really have a real choice on this matter.
So I'm going to turn to the West Bank before I ask you more about Iran. So the unrest there seems to have been building for quite some time, including, you know, pre-October 7th, which may have been a distraction as well. But we know that Iranian weapons are making their way through Syria, through Jordan, into Judea and Samaria. How stable are things, and how dangerous is the situation there as possibly becoming a third front?
You know, I think it's already a front. It's not just we're not just worried that it will I mean, it can, of course, always can escalate more, but we are already fighting in this front. We are fighting currently 7 fronts, including Judea and Samaria. By the way, again, we have to also change our terms of how do we call these places. I mean, the West Bank is basically a term that its whole purpose is to basically present as if the Jew doesn't have the rights to be there. I mean, it's much easier to explain why to expel the Jews from something called the West Bank instead of calling it the real name of it, which is Judea and Samaria. How can you expel the Jews from Judea? I mean, that's crazy. And you're right, it's crazy. So again, we have a serious problem in Judea and Samaria already. We know that the army already had multiple operations in Judea and Samaria in different places. We are seeing the terror infrastructure that they have there. The only difference, basically, between Judea and Samaria and Gaza is that in Judea and Samaria, they don't have the IDF is much stronger and holds the ground. What we didn't have in Gaza, and this is why we saw the difference of what happened. I mean, their desire to destroy us is exactly the same. Only their ability is different. This is what we've seen also on October 7th.
So I want to just talk a couple minutes about Iran and your Israel's approach to Iran. I thought the strike in retaliation was brilliant. It sent a clear message what Israel's capabilities are, and also, we learned a lot about Iran's failures militarily, their ballistic missiles that either didn't launch, didn't make it to their goals. But what does Israel, and I know that you can't, every webinar where Iran comes up, everybody wants to know, when is Israel going to strike? And I know that you can't share any of that information with us, but what are your thoughts on whether at some point Israel is going to have to strike Iran and go at the head of the serpent, and with or without US assistance? Because right now under this administration, I don't think you're going to see any assistance on something like that.
First of all, I think there's a Iranian scam to fade me away. I can already see that I'm fading away in this webinar. And again, I have to apologize that I'm doing this from my car, and it's already getting dark. So this is why I'm fading out. So maybe it's not an Iranian scam after all. But again, my apologies for that. But your question, and again, of course, most of the things I know I cannot share, unfortunately, but I think also on that manner, what I can say is that at the end of the day, we will not have a choice, because we can keep on fighting with the arms of the octopus, or we can hit the octopus on its head. And we all know that hitting the octopus on its head, this is the right thing to do, and it will save so much lives, because I mean, the Iranian people are peaceful people. They want peace. The Ayatollahs, they're torturing. They're not just torturing. They're not just anti-West and anti-Israel. They're also anti their own people. Their people are suffering. So if we will hit this octopus on its head, and I think that will be the best thing, not just for Israel, but for the world. And thinking again, the moment of truth showed that when the Emiratis and the Saudis and Jordanians had to choose Israel or Iran, choose, they chose the right side. Everybody understand the threat that Iran poses, again, not just to the Middle East, poses to the world. And I think that one day, and I hope it will be closer than sooner than later, we will have to deal with that and do what needs to be done, even if it will be without the support of America.
I know it's getting dark there, and there are a lot of questions. And I did say at the beginning, I didn't think that I was going to get to too many questions. So I'm going to just give you a final question, Ohad, and let you get on with the busy day that you've had. Do you see any possibility of reform among the Palestinian populations that have been seeped in Jew hatred, Israel's demise? 10/7 wasn't just the terrorists. We watched Gazans cross over, women, children, not just men, assisting the Hamas terrorists. So, if we defund UNRWA, which God willing will happen if a Trump administration comes back into power, what about the Palestinian people? Is there any hope? Because you're talking about a Palestinian state. I don't understand how you have a state when you don't even have a people that are willing to live side by side without a government in place.
You're right. I think the only way to change this reality with the Palestinians is not to give them hope that using terror will bring them closer to their goals, but the other way around. I believe that the only way to change the reality is to prove to the Palestinians that only if they will abandon their desire to destroy us, only if they will abandon their desire to basically establish a state here instead of Israel. Because we're always talking about the two-state solution, living side by side in peace and harmony with Palestinian and Jewish state living side by side together. That's fooling ourselves. so many soldiers coming back from Gaza, all telling that when they're getting to the homes of Gaza, they see on every home, they see a map of Israel with all the names of all the cities and all the villages and their little roads and everything is on it. By the way, there's no green line. And instead of Israel, it says Palestine. When they're shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What does it mean? What does it mean? Somebody asked himself, what does it mean? Free of what? Free of Jews. They don't want to have Jews at all in this region. They want a state instead of Israel, not living side by side with Israel. That's the reality. And as long as they have a hope that if they'll use terror, they'll get it, they'll keep using terror. The only way to change the way they think is by showing them that Israel is here to stay, and it's here, and it's strong, and it will do everything that needs to be done to deal with its enemies. And only when we will do that, we will see more and more, just like we've seen in Abraham Accords. Countries, I mean, why the Saudis and the Emiratis wants to sign peace treaties with Israel? Not because we're giving, they don't care about the Palestinians, they don't care about the Palestinian state. They want to have an alliance with a strong country who stand up to their enemies. This is what they want to see. And when we will be that, I assure you that also the Palestinians here in Israel will accept our existence.
Well, you're speaking towards also the Israel Victory Project, which I know that I believe you chair that, the Middle East Forum's Israel Victory Project. So I support that wholeheartedly, and we discussed that when I was in Israel. You're back, and we're gonna.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
No, it's okay.
I know
that it's getting late in Israel, and then I'm sure you have.
No problem. Sure.
So I just want to say thank you. And I don't know if you have any closing message you'd like to share with our audience before we go.
First of all, if it's okay with you, I'm open to questions. If you want to have like a couple of questions, it's fine with me, no problem. So go ahead if you want.
Okay, so people had asked, well, you mentioned the Western civilization. So why do you believe Hamas hating Arab countries now send their students to help oppose Hamas supporters on American campuses? Why don't they?
I didn't understand the question again, sorry.
Why don't, I guess, Israel's Sunni Arab states send their students to American campuses to counter the pro-Hamas narratives that we're seeing on the American campuses? If you have a thought on maybe why that's not occurring, or maybe it will occur.
At the end of the day, you have to understand that the Muslim world doesn't work in a way. I mean, it cannot openly, publicly go against other Muslims. They cannot do that. They have to, just as much, again, as you said before, that the Saudis didn't want to say that they wanted, part of their conditions to a normalization with Israel is the establishment of a Palestinian state, but because of the pressure they got from America, they had to say that. So just as much, the moderate Sunni countries of the Middle East will not send students to college campuses in America to condemn Hamas, but they will tell us in private conversations that they desire us to complete the job and complete the mission and eradicating Hamas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what do you, I guess I'm going to try to tie that into the Arab Street. What do you see happening in the Arab streets of your allied Abraham Accords nations? I know that the governments are supporting Israel, obviously, but is the Arab Street causing chaos within those individual countries? Is the Arab Street supporting Israel?
I think, we're in a process. We're in a process, and in a process, you have to build trust. And of course, it happened with the government, and it needs to happen with the people. And and again, I think the only way for this process to actually continue and to expand to the real people on the ground is only if they will see Israel strong, because that was the initial thing that pushed them to this normalization with Israel. And I think that if they will see that Israel is actually standing, and I spoke with many people, mostly in the Emirates, not just the leaders, just people, business people, and people on the streets, and you saw that they support Israel, but it's still hard for them because it's still hard for them to go against their brothers, their Muslim brothers. So it only if they will see that Israel is strong, standing with them on what is important to them, I think that will make them feel safe to really back Israel. I mean, I don't think they care about the Palestinians so much, because you already see, I mean, that they see that the Palestinians are causing themselves to suffer time and time again, and it proves itself.
People are asking in sort of a roundabout way plans for Gaza and how I guess post withdrawal, will there be a withdrawal fully of Israeli forces? I mean, I look, you started our conversation referring to the withdrawal from Gaza, and the U.S. allowed Hamas to take over. We know what happened in the north after the Lebanon war with UNIFIL and the failures of UNIFIL. So what do you see taking place in Gaza? What's going to be putting aside moving, taking away some of the land and making a more secure buffer zone? Who's going to govern Gaza, and have the Israelis really formulated a plan for post-war?
I've heard from one of the top security people of Israel, which I will not say his name, but he told me that in Western way of thinking, also in Israel, we want to see the description of the exact solution. It doesn't work this way in the Middle East. What I believe that what we need to have in Gaza is a mess, is a couple of years of a mess, when it's not clear who's governing. I mean, of course, one thing is for sure: Israel has to hold the security control of the Gaza Strip for many years. Okay, that's for sure. But when you have a whole generation, that from birth they'll learn to hate Jews, to kill Jews. I mean, I have the booklets of the Palestinian Authority, the textbooks of how they learn math and how they learn poetry and how they learn everything. Everything is about killing Jews. I mean, yeah, math they learn. If I killed 5 Jews and you killed 3 Jews, how many Jews did we kill all together? This is how they learn math, and this is how they learn everything. There's this famous video clip, an interview that was conducted with a Palestinian lady from Gaza, that her baby came to a hospital in Israel because the baby had a brain cancer, and the doctors in Israel cured the baby. And the guy from the television asked her, "What is your biggest wish? What do you want your baby to be when she'll grow up?" So the mother says, "I want her to be a shaheed." He said, "Shaheed, just people, that means a suicide bomber, to kill Jews." And he asked, "What do you mean? The Jews just saved your daughter. You want her to be shaheed?" She said, "Of course. Why are you so surprised? I mean, this is the biggest thing we can do for Allah." So that's the reality. And when you have a whole generation that this is how they grow up, if we will not change their education, it will have to have a long time. A whole generation has to change in order to really be able to discuss coexistence and beautiful words like peace and all these things. We have to have a whole generation. And in the meantime, yes, we'll have some chaos in the Gaza. It will not be clear who's in control on the civic issues.
So a final question, Ohad, that I get from a lot of people over the years is Israel doesn't seem to have a very good PR. Yes, we're losing you again. Should we let you go?
No, I'm here. I'm still with you.
So we'll end with this.
Yes.
We've got the international community really going after Israel. It's insane, as we know that you're on the front lines of Western civilization, but the UN itself is insane. I actually had lunch Ambassador Gilad Erdogan last week, and he wants the UN completely defunded. But you mentioned the ICC looking to issue arrest warrants of Israeli officials, including its prime minister. Do you think that PR would make a difference? I'm going to give my opinion first and just say I don't think so. I think this is anti-Semitism. The double standards are clear. But is there something that Israel can do to reach American Jews, to reach the Arabs who understand Israel as the strong horse and want to support Israel? What can Israel do?
First of all, you're right. I think we can always improve and do more. I think that in this war, we did a lot better than we did in previous campaigns that we had, because I think there was a lot of money, government money, that was invested in social media, in taking, not just that the state will create campaigns, but that, that take the people on the ground from many countries who support Israel, and knows how to deal with social media, and to just sponsor them and allow them to run their show. So I think we improved a lot, and we still have a lot to go. There's a long way to go to improve. But I think you're right. At the end of the day, we have to realize also the truth here. And the fact is that we are only 14 million people. The whole Jewish people, we're only 14 million. There's billion Muslims, and so we will always no matter how much money we will invest, and how much effort and energy and better campaign we will do, we will always be at the back of this matter. And you're right. I mean, anti-Semitism at the end of the day is stronger. Unfortunately, that's the truth. I mean, anti-Semitism is rising, and unfortunately, yes, I don't expect to see like a complete change on that manner.
I'll tell you one argument that I made when I was in Israel was, I think that 47-minute video needs to be released far and wide, and I think it should be required watching in high school classrooms and freshman college classrooms, and perhaps we wouldn't see what we're seeing on college campuses if students watch that.
Maybe, but I would not get my expectations so high, because I don't think people care today about the truth so much. I mean, just as much as people deny the Holocaust today, you can have as many footages as you want. You can go to Auschwitz and as many times as you want. But at the end of the day, it will not prevent from people hating the Jews and wanting that to happen exactly the same all over again. So, but again, you're right. I mean, we can always improve. We should improve. We should do everything we can, everything we have in our disposal, we should use. But again, just saying, I would not get my expectations high that it will actually change the reality.
Well, we here at the Endowment for Middle East Truth are working on our end to try to do what we can for our Israeli family. So I can't thank you enough for being here, Ohad. It's really a pleasure. I knew when I met you briefly in Israel that you were going to be a terrific guest. And I know that you have a crazy busy schedule. There's a lot going on in Israel. So God bless. Thank you so much for being with us, and wishing you all the best. Well, yes.
And I would just end with one short thing. I've heard from former ambassador to Washington, Ron Dermer, who said, a couple of weeks ago, he said that when he was ambassador to Washington, he met so many ambassadors from all over the world, but he never met the ambassador of the Persian Empire, and he never met the ambassador of the Roman empires, and all these superpowers who wanted to destroy us 2,000 years ago and 3,000 years ago. They're long gone, and we are still here. So I'm telling you that at the end of the day, we will win. We will stay here. We are here to stay. Maybe it's hard, maybe it's complicated, but we are here to stay.
Well, I love ending on a positive note like that. So thank you. Those are good words to end with. So again, thank you. Be well. We're all fighting for you. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed that. Thank you very much for the honor. Thank you very much for having me. Toda rabba.
Toda rabba.